All right then. So I am today here with Henrik. So for those of you that don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself for us?
Hello, I'm Henriikssen. I am a jack of all trades but a master of none. I've speedrun some Harry Potter games, but I'm not very good at them. I edit video, I make music, and most importantly for, I guess, today, I am the project coordinator and main contributor to the HP2 redub project with all of the lines poorly translated. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you. Can you explain what the Reader project is?
So the redub project was born as a combination of two different ideas. Back when I joined the community, so in like the first few months of 2021, I believe, there was already quite a lot of talk about people wanting to do a redub of one of the Harry Potter games with members of the community. But of course, everything that amounts to too much trouble, most people don't want to do it themselves. They just cast the idea out and they're like, oh, it would be fun. It would be fun. Um, so this idea stuck in the back of my mind. And then the second thing I saw was, I believe the first one I saw of this kind was a Mario Party video. Yeah, I think it was a Mario Party, but all of the lines had been poorly translated. And I remember laughing out loud at the video and thinking, wouldn't it be fun to have a Harry Potter game do the same thing? So I grabbed HP2's lines because if I was to do something with it, Metallica fans' HP2 editor is incredibly robust and allows you to do almost everything with the engine. So I grabbed the HP2 lines and I set about randomly translating a couple of them every night. So this was at the end of 2022 and at the start of 2023, like until the end of January. And I kept sending the highlights of my translations to Keldeo and to Winter, and they really loved it. And then I just sat on it for like 6 months until I eventually went to Germany for the holidays. I spent a week there, and when I was over at Nixo's house, I was like, "Oh, remember that thing about a reader project that you kept talking about and advocating that should be done, but you never wanted to do it yourself?" So I'm planning on doing one of those, and I have all those poorly translated HP2 lines. Wouldn't it be fun to combine both? I guess I can coordinate it. I don't have anything to do at the moment. I finished my degree. Uh, I am looking for other stuff to do in the meantime. So, I can do the project. I just need people to sign up. So while we were in Germany, Nixo created a form for people to sign up and choose characters that they wanted to play as, or to play in the read dub. And yeah, eventually it all went from there to where we are now at the release of the project finally. Um, so yeah, I guess that's the history of the redub. So it's very very poorly Google translated lines. Like every single line has been custom to Google Translate like 80 to 100 times, I believe. Just selecting different languages each time and then going back to English and seeing what the hell it generated. And yeah, when Lockhart goes from being pleased to announce that he's teaching at Hogwarts Defense Against Dark Arts to saying, "I am the heir to the Dark Lord of Hogwarts," you can sort of see the amount of weirdness that the project entails.
Yeah, it's that like switch is like how did it get there? Like
Yeah,
how do you go from that to
that's the
that?
greatest mystery, honestly. There are a couple of lines that you can sort of guess. Like, every single time a goodbye is turned into a hello, or a hello is turned into a goodbye, I have a feeling that it's been translated into Italian, because the Italian word ciao means both hello and goodbye. It's like a generic greeting. So I'm like, oh, I think it's been a ciao before at some point in the pipeline. And the translator didn't have any context, so it just tried to guess. So a lot in the project, if you play through it, in a lot of the cutscenes, you see some goodbyes being turned into hellos and hellos being turned into goodbyes. There are some others that I just have no damn clue where they went with the lines. You know, they invent nouns, they invent adjectives, they invent whole phrases, they cut phrases. The translator went mad. But I think that's one of the things that made it so much fun. Both to play through, but also just to work on them and just, you know, I translated the lines about almost a year before I actually worked with the voice lines that people started sending me from the community. So, you know, at that point, I'd forgotten a lot of the lines. And seeing them again or hearing them unexpectedly just made me laugh all over again, just the same as when I was translating them. So if it's making me laugh this much while I'm working on them, I hope people also laugh alongside the project while they're playing.
I'm sure they definitely will. You have just answered about 4 of my questions in one question.
Sorry.
Well, that's fine. Do you have like a number of how many people in total have touched this project?
I believe it's either 39 or 40, which is a nightmare to coordinate with people, especially because one of the problems with my project originally is that I didn't set a deadline, because I didn't know when I would stop having time to work on it. So it was like, you know, I guess people take about a month, maybe 2 months to send me everything. I was very optimistic back then. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out, and I had to set a hard deadline as soon as I found out that from basically the second half of January, I'd be just unavailable for anything. So I set a hard deadline of like, you have to send me your voice lines until 31st of December, because otherwise I won't have any more time to work on it. And most people corresponded. A lot of them on the day of the deadline, you know, the cutoff point. But at least they pulled through. So we have a ton of people who contributed to making all of this possible.
So that's why it's been released now then. Because, yeah, you're occupied for the rest of the
I will be
month.
occupied, yeah, basically. So this date has been, even though it was only revealed on the 7th, with the release of the official trailer, that I called it, the date has been set in stone since about the start of December. So, or maybe even the end of November, I don't know. I'd have to check back my DM history with some people. But it's been set in stone for a long while.
Getting the backstage gossip here, guys. Okay, given you've already answered some of the questions that I'd written down, I'm going to ask you one that I hadn't written down. How did you approach the casting process?
That's a good question. With a lot of people in the community, you know, they stream, they speedrun. Most of them stream on Twitch. So for those, I already had an idea of their vocal range, you know, of at least their normal voice. There were 2 characters that were not up to being, well, 3 characters, I guess. Maybe 4. 4 characters. Sorry. There were 4 characters that I determined immediately who was going to play them. One of them was because I gave Nixo permission to choose one character before anyone else, because of the help that he provided spreading the word around of the project. And he ended up choosing Lockhart. Fair enough. Good character.
Which is kind of slightly ironic, I find, when you think about it.
It's a little bit. The second character that I immediately knew who had to play it was Hagrid. There was only one person with the vocal ability to play Hagrid. And it was Finn. So Finn was immediately the first person contacted, like, can you play Hagrid on this silly project I'm working on? And Finn was like, yeah, sure. And he sent me the voice lines like a couple of days later. So even in the summer, I already had something to work on. And then the other characters were Aragog, plus one spider, I guess, that has one voice line in one cutscene, and also the narrator, because, well, the narrator I wanted to do. Seeing as I was the project coordinator, I wanted to, oversee the entire story, but not actively participate. And Aragog, I just didn't want anyone to murder their throat for me. So there was a day when I got home and I was, with a massive flu. So my throat was completely murdered. I was speaking like this. So I was like, oh, this is good Aragog voice. I might as well record it already. So I did, with wonderful lines as, I do not eat girls in the bathroom, and stuff like that.
Do you eat girls then, Aragog?
Those were the only ones that were predetermined, I guess. All the other ones, I sent a form with all of the characters except Dobby. I forgot Dobby. I think I also forgot Madame Pomfrey.
And the Sorting Hat.
And Percy. And the Sorting Hat. So I forgot a couple of characters that I had to cast after the fact. Some of them, like Percy and Madame Pomfrey, they didn't have cutscene lines. So I forgot about those because of that. With Dobby and the Sorting Hat, I don't know what happened. But this was done, on one summer evening in Germany randomly. So I blame the German environment. And people would sign up. They would say, oh, I won't mind playing this character or this character or this character or a random student. And I would look at the list and I would, based on my knowledge of the people in the community, I prioritized giving named characters to people who were already established speedrunners in the community at some level, and of course prioritizing the characters that showed up more with the people who I already knew their voice, and that was it really. Then there was no other criteria. I tried to pick the golden trio. I was very particular on. I already had Harry in mind. I already had SLS in mind for Harry, but I was dependent on whether SLS would sign up or not. Fortunately for me, he did, because I think SLS was really, really captured Harry's essence. Then, of course, I saw that Dino signed up for Ron, and I was like, yep, perfect. He would play the character brilliantly. He has that comedic tone that's required for a lot of Ron's lines, and he played it brilliantly. And then I had several different people in mind for Hermione. Some of them didn't pan out because people were suddenly unavailable. And I ended up landing on Sonia, who she did a wonderful job with it as well. She actually tried actively to do a British accent, which didn't come off badly. It actually is pretty damn good, was what I wanted to say. So the Golden Trio I was very, very particular on. And then there were a couple of characters that I knew had to be played by people who would give some sort of emotion or some sort of vibe to the characters. I immediately knew I wanted Paxi to play Goyle, and he signed up for Goyle. Jamie did a wonderful Malfoy, and several other characters that you'll see if you play through the whole read-up.
It's definitely interesting because, like you say, SLS, I think, was an inspired choice for Harry, especially because I think he is one of the longest, if not not the long, if not the longest, active current runner besides maybe Beaver.
Yeah,
That's still around in the
it was
community.
also one of the things that made me go for SLS, mostly because he's been spearheading this community as one of the faces of the Harry Potter speedrunning community for so long, that it just felt right. And also, his voice, once again. He did a wonderful job with
Oh,
it.
definitely. That and Sonia, I will preface. Obviously, this is going to be coming out next month, but at the time of recording, all I've seen is the trailer because the project isn't actually out yet. We just decided to get this recorded before Henrik gets busy, like he says. So I haven't. That sounds, you know what I mean. But yeah, so all I've seen is the trailer. But I do have to say, what I heard of Sonia in the trailer, I was like really pleasantly surprised. Like I realized because I said this on my stream last night, and I'm like, I realized it sounded like I thought she was going to be shit. I didn't.
Oh, come on.
I just like the way I did not expect her to sound that good.
Yeah,
but then like, the whole trailer was like I told you like I thought the trailer was going to be good because I know you're very experienced with video editing. You've done Nixo's best of videos. You've done a whole bunch of other stuff. But I did not expect it to be as brilliant and gripping as it was. For like, what's it, like 2.5 minutes ish?
More or less, yeah. It's basically like, 2 full minutes of the part of the video editing and stuff. The trailer was actually, I started working on the trailer like in October. So it's been a very, very long project that I've been working on in bits. Mostly because even though most of the people back then hadn't sent me any voice lines, not most of them, but about half of them, I could already see what the lines were going to be, and I allocated certain lines to certain spots in the timeline on my editing timeline in Premiere. I wanted to do it as authentically as a movie trailer or a game trailer could be. So I thought about using the soundtrack from the game, picking a music from the game. I thought they didn't fit the trailer atmosphere. Maybe the main theme could have worked more or less, but it didn't really provide that sense of excitement, of moving forwards, of the bombasticness of it. So I went for the main theme for the first movie, which YouTube caught on, but fortunately Brother Warner allows me to still have it up on YouTube. Thank you, Brother Warner.
Thank you, Brother Warner.
And yeah, I wanted to make it as legit as possible, even though the silly ass dialogue, is still there. So there was a limit to how serious and how normal I can make the trailer, I guess.
It still gets quite serious towards the end. Like you start off quite lighthearted, I feel like, but it starts to really build the more it goes into it, of like quite a dark sort of vibe.
Yeah. I also wanted it to have a clear line, a clear storyline from the beginning of the trailer to the end of the trailer. So first, you're you have the Dobby saying, you shouldn't go back to Hogwarts, played by Wrench, who did a wonderful job with just those 2 lines that he has. You have Caldeo playing Flitwick, explaining, the boy was expelled from Hogwarts and stuff like that, which I don't know where it got that from. I don't think the line itself said anything. Oh no, because it was talking about Slytherin being expelled. Never mind. So it was like setting up the seeds. And suddenly it was like when one leader dies, another is created, and immediately it shows Malfoy flying on his broom. So for a while, you focus on Malfoy. And you're like, oh, Malfoy's clearly the villain. Then Malfoy himself says, no, the first secret meeting had already taken place. And they're like, oh, who could that be? And then Lockhart comes out and says, oh, I'm the heir to the Dark Lord of Hogwarts. And they're like, oh, clearly that's the new bad guy that I'm supposed to follow along in this trailer. Even Hermione is saying, don't trust Professor Lockhart, which the translator completely invented, that voice line. You have then yourself playing the sorting hat, Miney, saying, I stand by what I said before. See Slytherin. Then we're talking about snakes, and then suddenly I found this very, very funny line that the translator decided to spew out, which was like, if Harry Potter is the heir of Slytherin, why is he still studying Quidditch? And I don't remember who recorded that. I'm sorry to the person who recorded that line. I don't remember who did it. But it was so raw and powerful that I was like, I have to include this in the trailer as a transition to show some Quidditch, because Malfoy plays Quidditch, and Quidditch is fun to have in the trailer. And then you have the whole thing about, go to Moan Myrtle's bathroom and find the door to the Chamber of Secrets. And then it just ends with that montage of several different things that you see in the game, with opening a chest. Then I think it's dueling. Then I think it's Quidditch, catching the snitch. Then you're walking alongside Dumbledore. You're casting on a Lumos statue. Harry doing a Hess from collecting a card, falling down in the great hall, or the entrance hall. Sorry. And then you see Aragog, and then you fight the basilisk, and then it's over. And it's like, whoa. Oh, it's powerful. Oh, but it leaves like that small silence with Flo saying nonsense at the end. Flo playing Tom Riddle at the end, just before the title shows up, and it's like, oh, relieving tension. Oh, but it's also a very good showcase of several of the different voices that we have in the project, because I think the trailer itself has like 20 different characters speaking or something, which is a lot of people, and it made for a good enough showcase of what the project eventually became.
It really came good, and you can really hear from just talking to you just how much thought you put into the trailer. I mean, it's a big selling point, obviously, for the project, but, like, the project itself, after working on something like that, I'd probably be like, oh, goodness, I've got to work on a trailer now? But I think, from the sound of things, you did it right in starting to work on it sooner rather than later, so that it wasn't like that. You already had stuff building, you had the plan going, and it was just waiting for people to submit the lines so you could slot the lines into the right places.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, well, I really enjoy editing video. I wouldn't say that I wanted to do it for a job, but as a hobby, as a side project, as a passion project, I love editing video. So when I had this project and I knew I wanted to reveal the release date with a trailer, and immediately I was like, oh, if I'm gonna do a trailer, I'm gonna do it in style. I'm gonna do it well. So, yeah, that was one of the most fun I've had with the project. The only part of the trailer that was really boring to do was adding in all of the sound effects. Because all of the footage that you see, that I recorded, didn't have any sounds. Even when there's one of the footages, a bit of footage that I used, where Harry is jumping on a Spongify tile and is gathering beans. I had to download the bean collecting sound and then pasting it 4 times for each of the beans, because I didn't have the footage.
Oh my god!
Like, everything, every single sound effect you hear was added in post. And sometimes I changed it. The Lumos sound effect you hear is different from the one in the final version. It's like a weird modified version of the HP1 one, because it just sounded better.
So did you also redub that in the game, or was that just for the trailer?
Just for the trailer. I didn't touch anything in the game besides I did change a couple of things in terms of the text of the game itself, but I didn't change any sound effects. Everything is as it should be. I even tried to approximate, the sound effects for when you're speaking parcel tongue and the ghosts that have a lot of reverb. I try to approximate it in a way when editing the voice lines. But as far as music, sound effects in the game and everything like that, I didn't touch anything. I had quite a few people suggesting to me stuff like, oh, can you add like Goyle's theme to the Bean bonus room because it would be funny? And I'm like, no, because that's not how the game was made. You know, this is supposed to be like, if the writers for the HP2 game were drunk one night and they decided to write up some weird ass nonsense and somehow it made it into an official version of the game, what would that be? So that's why everything is sort of official. I do have a couple of surprises because I did say that I edited the text files, and there's way more text files than just the voice line files. So if you haven't played the redub yet, when this comes out, first of all, what's wrong with you? Second of all, pay attention to all of the text because you might find some surprises there.
As I say, we're recording this in the week leading up to the release.
Yeah, because so you
so
don't
I
know.
have no idea what he's talking about, but I'm intrigued now. I wish we were recording this next week.
Sorry.
Alright, also I'm realising we've been sat here now for like nearly half an hour talking about this, which is fine. It's just, we get so, like, it's so cool to talk to you about this because obviously you can tell you're so passionate about it.
This is turning into a podcast.
We'll go into those probably more standardized questions that we have. Like, what I rolled these two into one, so we can probably save a little bit of time. What has been the highlight of this project for you, and what has been the biggest struggle with a project of this size?
Highlight, highlight of the project. Does the trailer count? No, I'll try to pick something different. Whenever I have new voice lines coming in and seeing everyone's take on the character, that's definitely one of the highlights of the project for me, because people inject. Most people in the project injected a lot of their personality into the characters, but tried also to mix it with the original characters. So, it's wonderful to receive some voice lines from someone who you haven't received voice lines from before, and seeing their take on the character. That's always a fun bit, and also because oftentimes I forget what their lines are, so I end up laughing a lot when editing the voice lines for the first time, because I'm like, what the hell is this nonsense? The biggest struggle, it's between one of the two. One of them hasn't really been a struggle in the sense that it's a lot of work, and the other has. So the one that's a passive struggle is bothering people to record their voice lines, but also trying to not be too pushy, I guess. I had a hard time trying to come to grips that, yep, I do have to set a hard deadline, otherwise people won't submit their voice lines because they just procrastinate. So waiting for people to do that, all of that, was definitely a big struggle, because I was like, I want to get this done with. I don't have anything to add it now. Can someone please send me stuff? The biggest struggle in terms of actively doing something was definitely that, you know how it goes. When you're coordinating a project with 40 different people, sometimes some people's microphones are top quality. Sometimes they're not. And trying to edit voice lines of the people whose microphones are, well, not up to professional quality. And mine isn't. But this is like I'm staring at the microphone now. You, microphone, that I'm staring at, you're like the bare minimum that I expect. So I don't have to do much post-processing, most editing after the fact. But some people's microphones, I've had to literally look at sound waves to see when to cut, because they just have so much background noise that sometimes you hear the voice line and I couldn't edit all of the background noise, like the from the background. I just couldn't physically. So I hope people forgive me for that part of the redub, you know. It was quite hard to work on some of them. I stared at WAV files way longer than I anticipated and way longer than I wanted to. But yeah, that was definitely a struggle because sometimes I would edit like 50 lines in about an hour and a half, and I'd be very happy adding them into the editor, or sometimes even faster than that. Other times, I'd edit 60 lines in about 3 hours, which just, it wasn't that fun in the end. If I had known the amount of work that that this project would entail at the start, I might have not done it. Well, what matters is that it's done now, and it's my gift to the community. Here you go. Have a belated holiday gift.
That's It sounds like you've done a lot of like, cause it'd be very easy for someone to assume that all you've done is just got people to record a bunch of lines and shoved them in the game. But from the sounds of things, you've done a lot of extra work to make it as good as you can.
Well, the basic work I did with all of them was trying to compress, I guess, a little bit of the WAV files, so you wouldn't have variations as harsh as the person speaking like this and then suddenly like this. You know, we want it to be averaged out, so all of the lines sound more or less the same volume. So that was the first one I did, and then just cropping them. So it started when the person actually started speaking, instead of having half a second, 1 second, 2 seconds of silence beforehand, because that's noticeable in game, you know. If the line shows up at the bottom and no one's speaking for a second and a half, you notice that there's something wrong with it.
I'm just imagining the Filch jump scare near the beginning of the game. It's like,
blast you, Potter!
Well.
That too. There is a line when you bump into Filch. It's programmed to always be the first line that plays when you bump into Filch when you're going to Charms class, I think. And Filch just screams, blast you, Potter! I'll get you! And, you know, it only works effectively with scaring the player, I guess, because as soon as you bump into Filch, he immediately goes, and it's terrifying because it's Filch. But that's the principle with all of the voice lines. They have to start like as soon as the person starts speaking, and they have to end as soon as the person stops speaking, because otherwise it messes up the tempo of the cutscenes and stuff like that, and you notice it. You physically notice when playing the game. So that was the basic treatment, and then I had to do a lot of treatment in other types of voice lines, depending on the quality provided. Most people that had a lot of voice lines had solid enough microphones, and I didn't have to do much editing in post, but it was always tedious just cropping every single voice line one at a time, because there's no automated way to do it, at least not as far as I'm concerned, with my very, very limited coding skills. Mm-hmm. So it was time consuming. That wasn't the part I struggled with the most. It was definitely the most boring part of the project. It was just cropping up every single voice line for, the 3,000 lines I had to work with.
It's a lot of lines. So you've done this now with HPTPC, and I feel like we've heard rumors going around of people saying you should do this with HP1, HP3, like another game. Is that something you would ever consider doing?
I just think that people don't have an idea of the amount of work it went into the project. Not alone. I will definitely say that I'd be up to helping out if someone wants to do HP1 or HP3 read-up. I'd be willing to help out. I'd be willing to participate as a voiced character, But I definitely outsource the bulk of the work to someone else, because I think one of these projects is quite enough for me to do all by myself. I learned from my mistakes, I should say. So don't expect a new redub every single year or something like that, unless someone else wants to join and do the most of the work. I can teach you all, but I can't do it anymore. Not right now.
I do think it's definitely that a lot of people don't quite understand how much. I mean, I didn't realize just how much work you were doing with these lines before we spoke today. Like, I knew, obviously, you're working really hard on it, but I don't think I quite understood the depth of the work you were doing on the project. So I can definitely, because I've seen those comments. Obviously, I've seen those comments because I brought it up. But no, what I'm saying is I've seen those comments, so I definitely now sort of have that perspective of, yeah, it's a lot of work, and I also the thing I wanted to bring up, but I forgot about it. Like you're talking about coordinating a project with a lot of people. As someone who has been a Potathon organizer for Potathon 9, I can attest to trying to coordinate with around again. I think it was around 40 people for Potathon
It's
9.
hard, isn't it?
That trying to get responses from 40 or so people for things can be a bit of a pain. And like you say, you don't want to bug them too much because you don't want to think you're going a bit OTT, but you need a
Yeah.
response. So you
The
can work
main
on
the main
this.
problem I faced wasn't when getting the original responses, because a lot of people were enthusiastic about the project and were like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to voice Fred and George or someone." The problem was afterwards, when they actually have actively had to work. That's when the trouble began, you see, because some people, myself included in some respects, are professional procrastinators, and I definitely now know a little bit more about the people in the community than I did before. I'll say it this way as to not hurt anyone, because most people that submitted their voice lines like right on the deadline of the project, they themselves admitted, like, I'm sorry, I screwed up, I should have done this way earlier, I kept postponing it, and then I kept feeling bad about it, but I kept not doing it. And I'm like, yeah, I know that feeling. I did that from almost all of my assignments in university. But when it was just myself doing assignments with my whose only impact was my own grades, I can afford to take a long time doing it. But this project had 30 or so other people involved, and I wouldn't go as far as some people have told me that they feel like it's, oh, there's lack of respect for everyone else, everyone's done their bits and they have to wait for the few that haven't. I won't go as far, because I sort of understand the perspective of the people who kept postponing it, and eventually they even felt bad about it. But yeah, coordinating a project of this magnitude is definitely not easy. So when you see one of these big events, take a moment to appreciate the people involved, and especially the people involved in trying to coordinate it all, because it's not easy to work with so many people in several different parts of the world with completely different lives.
Yeah, I could definitely attest to that. It can often prove a challenge. It's fun. Like we don't, obviously we're not sat here running saying it's awful.
No,
We don't want to do
definitely.
it because we wouldn't do it if we did enjoy it. But it's definitely a side effect of when you're working with so many people from so many different time zones, so many different languages as well. I expect.
Yeah, I've had quite a few people saying like, "Oh, apologies, my English it isn't that good," and I'm like, that bit doesn't matter. If people don't understand anything, that's subtitles. It's fine. I'd rather you be here than you not be here. But there's definitely challenges for people who wanted to participate in this project, and even in Potterthon overall. But who don't feel like their English is good enough, I guess. I'm doing quotation marks in the air behind my microphone, because you shouldn't have to learn a different language than your native one just to participate in one of these projects. Of course, we had to have a communal language that we all could communicate in, especially in the redub, because if it was everyone's different language, I don't think many people would understand what Luke says in his native language, because he's from Malta. Do you speak Maltese? I have no fucking clue what Maltese sounds like.
No.
So we had to have a basic language that most people could understand, but it's definitely one of the barriers, I guess, to being more active in a specific community like this one. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of challenges in working with so many different people that you can't abide by a contract that they'll be there, because otherwise you'd probably have to pay them to be there. People are taking times off of their days to work on these passion projects, and we also have to respect that side of the coin. But yeah, it's fun. And when we see the finished product, it makes most of the grind worth it.
Yeah, I can definitely say from Part of Fun, when we finished Part of Fun, we were so happy with how it turned out. And I'm sure when the redub comes out this weekend, I'm sure you'll be really happy too.
If it's as good as the reception of the trailer, I'll be over the moon. But as soon as it comes out, I don't care about it anymore. I'm dropping it. It's part of the community now. You can do whatever you want with it. You can do chaos mods in the redub client. I don't care. It's done. It's off to the fans, and I don't want my hand on it.
Are you going to be keeping an eye out for any bugs potentially, or
maybe? Either that, or I'm just gonna accept it as features. I don't know. I don't know, Riley.
It's not a bug; it's a feature.
Exactly. The Bethesda way. The fans will fix it.
We've talked a lot about the redub, so to conclude, now that the redub project is out, or will be out at the time of this releasing, what are your plans for speedrunning in 2024?
Oh gosh. Well, that would entail me having a lot of time in I wanted to co-op runs, but I never seem to find the time and the people to do them with. But because one of the things that I've done quite a lot of Harry Potter speedruns. Quite a lot. I've done like 7 or something. But it's enough for me to have the feeling that I did them all offline, on my own time. One day, one afternoon, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna speedrun HP6. Because sure, why not? The only speedrun that I've really done on Twitch was 6DS, because I promised everyone I'd stream 6DS. And I ended up doing it and despising the game afterwards. But it was a very solitary experience. It's you and the game. If you're playing online, maybe you have sometimes a message from your chat to cheer you up and to have something to talk about. And I can talk to myself in front of a microphone for hours. That's not the issue here. But I just find it to be a lonely experience. And whenever I'm playing games alone, I don't like for it to be competitive, because it doesn't feel right. I want to take my own time, I want to have fun. I want to play it at my own pace. If I'm going to go fast, I want an incentive to do it, and I feel like having a community around to help out is definitely one of the incentives, but still not enough for me, because I know that I'll never be good enough to get a world record in any game, because I'm not good at playing games. So I'd like to do some co-op runs, like the Lego games and HP4 co-op. It's just a matter of finding someone who can carry me, because I'm not that good. That's my goal. That's the only goal I have. I know I'm probably the most boring one out of all of the people who are going to be and that have been interviewed for this little project. Because I'd say I'm much more of a content creator than a speedrunner. You know, I edit video, I make music. I don't see myself as a speedrunner. I see myself as a speedrunner and a 5 GBA enjoyer, and that's enough for me. I'm sorry I'm taking so much time answering everything, by the way.
No, it's nice to hear you talk so passionately, and I hope that people that did enjoy the reader or played the reader will come and listen to this, not just because it's nice to have people to listen to our stuff, but also like it's really interesting to hear you talk about it in such like depth and to talk about all the effort you put into it. And like I said before, I don't think everyone quite knows how much you have put into this, and that definitely needs to be celebrated and appreciated. So thank you, Henrik, and also thank you for the work you do on our team. I know you've not been around obviously that much because you have been very busy with this little project of yours.
And other things, yes. Currently, I'm also in the middle of editing Nixel's best of. As we're recording this, I just interrupted my editing to record this interview.
Oh, I'm so sorry for interrupting your editing with a scheduled interview.
No worry. I did that to myself. No, but yeah, I haven't had much time to dedicate to this channel and this project in specific. But I've tried. I've definitely tried. And
you have. And what you have contributed has been very much appreciated. I'm not saying this to pull you under the bus.
I'll be more active in April. Starting in April, I promise.
Alright, you heard it here first, chat. Henrik will be working on everything in April. He'll be doing everything all by himself. We'll all go on vacation.
No.
Chat? Why did I say chat as well?
Chat! Oh my god, you
chat.
You damn streamers. All these young folk with their TikTok accounts.
TikTok? You sound like you said Tic Tac.
I did it on purpose, mine.
That's a sweet.
Stop ruining my jokes.
I'm sorry, sir. But anyway, before we go too off the rails, thank you, Henrik, for joining us.
Pleasure's all
thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yeah. Thank you. Play through the read up. Bye bye.